Okay, so as you know, we just finished up going over the homework and talking about some things related to the diagramming of sentences. So we have some new ones that we're going to go over now. So it's recommended, highly recommended that you write these down, that you add them to your notes. As I said, the exam or the quiz or the test, whatever you want to call it, next Monday on Halloween, you'll be able to use any notes that you have. The only thing you won't be able to use will be the pop quiz that you took and that we went over um, on Monday. So, some new ones. And as I had mentioned on Monday, we were going to talk about prepositions, prepositional phrases, linking verbs. So that's what we're going to get into today. So as I said, you'll want to write some things down. I'll upload this video to Schoology as well, so you'll be able to consult it again if you need to go back over and add to your notes. So, because I won't be pausing it as we go, because we want to get this done in the class period. So prepositions, and prepositions are difficult, especially with their definition, because the definition isn't really that clear. The definition, that if you look in any grammar book, it's going to say something to the effect that it shows relationships, relationship between words in a sentence. Now that's kind of vague and not very descriptive, but if you look at how it actually does work in a sentence, and you think of some other things, it will be clearer for you. For example, oftentimes a preposition shows location or direction. And so I've listed some prepositions here for you. And so again, it might not be a bad idea to write these down or just be aware of them. Above, across, after, against, along, among, around, behind, below, beside, between, and by. Those are all common prepositions, as well as through, into, in, up, down. Those are all, or can be used as prepositions. So the clearest way to explain them might be to watch this quick little video that we could watch right now. So let's check this out.
Preposition, it's your ambition to tell me exactly my position. I could be on the couch or outside my house. Am I across the street or within your reach? I could go up the stairs or fall off my chair. Am I in front of you? Are you behind me too? Preposition, it's your ambition to tell me exactly my position. Preposition, you're on a mission to tell me exactly my position. Take a walk with me, and we'll go by the sea, and then along the path that goes around and back, and underneath the waves, or inside a cave. And before we're through, we'll jump over the moon. Preposition, it's your ambition to tell me exactly my position. Preposition, you're on a mission to tell me exactly my position. I could be on the couch outside my house. Am I across the street or within your reach? I could go up the stairs. Did I fall off my chair? Am I in front of you? Are you behind me too? Now I'm about to say, without further delay, when you're next to me, that's where I wanna be. Now we're near the end, but we're among good friends. So that after this, I'll do it one more time. Preposition, it's your ambition to tell me exactly my position. Preposition, you're on a mission to tell me exactly
Well, so that was the Bazillions, the preposition song. And actually, they actually tour the country. So if you're a big fan of the Bazillions, you could look out for them. They even sell their concert shirts with the prepositions on the front, so that'd be kind of cool. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit more what prepositions are. So a couple more things about prepositions. A preposition is never used by itself in a sentence. Um, we might get into that later on, but I don't want to confuse people. But if a preposition, um, such as up in the sentence, he walked up the stairs, up is a preposition. But if he just said, he walked up, period, up becomes an adverb. So that's why we need to realize that a preposition is never used by itself. It always has an object of the preposition and or some adjectives and other words to help describe it. So here's a sentence with two prepositional phrases. We have the cake with nuts fell onto the floor. The cake is the subject, with nuts is describing the cake. Then the cake, what did it do? It fell, and onto the floor is the prepositional phrase. It tells us where the cake fell. So you'll see that there's a connection between prepositional phrases and items in the sentence. For example, this right here, with nuts, is describing the cake. So cake is a noun, common noun. Okay, so you might, again, write these things down. With nuts is a prepositional phrase, and we could just do that as P for prepositional phrase. It's also an adjective phrase because it's describing the nuts. On this side of it, fell and then onto the floor is another prepositional phrase here. So that's a prepositional phrase. But this time it's describing fell. And we know fell is an action verb. So if we wanted to say, well, what part of speech defines or describes an action verb, we would say it's an adverb. So while this is a prepositional phrase, it's also an adverb phrase. That just gets into a little bit more advanced grammar for those of you who pick this up quickly. You could sort of make note of those extra things. It'll impress your Latin and German teachers, as well as maybe they do it in French and Spanish. So moving on, remember that a preposition is never used by itself in a sentence. So as we go, prepositional phrase acts as the one specific part of speech. Wow, I just talked about that. Let's see if you could figure this out, people. So we have the sentence, a teacher from our school spoke briefly. If the subject of the sentence is teacher, and we know that that's a noun, common noun, of course, and this little prepositional phrase right here, from our school, is describing the teacher, what part of speech would from our school be? We know it's a prepositional phrase. Hopefully you are saying it is an yes. Good job, it's an adjective. The yellow dog ran under the fence and down the hill. We have the subject, dog. What did the dog do? He ran. Then we have two prepositional phrases. Where did he run? Under the fence and down the hill. Each of these is a prepositional phrase. They're not describing the dog. They're describing where he ran. So they're describing a verb, an action verb of specifics. So you would be able to tell us that the part of speech that describes an action verb is, of course, an adverb. So these two are adverb phrases. Make sure you're aware of that. And again, this video will be posted on Schoology, but I'm highly recommending that you write these things down as we go. If you need to go back to your notes, of course, this will be on Schoology, so you can go back and double check things. All right, so take a second there to get your notes down. I'm not going to pause too long because a lot of these things you should know what the part of speech is already. We know that the teacher spoke, that's the action verb, and briefly tells us how long he spoke. That's an adverb. All right, so moving on. How are we going to diagram these things? Very interesting. Before we get into that, here are some more prepositional phrases. Above the clouds, across the street, near my home, by your locker, among many friends, below the ice, around his neck. These are all prepositional phrases. We have the preposition. We have an article. And if you remember from the other day, this is a common noun, but it's also object of the preposition. So that's what you want to be aware of in all these. If you have the preposition, you have a prepositional phrase, and you have an object of the preposition. Sometimes we have an adjective in here to describe as well, possessive adjective here, and so forth. So thinking about how we're going to define, or not define, but diagram these is usually the same way we'd all go about diagramming other things. Remember that if the words are describing the subject, they come off the subject. If they're describing the verb, they branch off of the verb. So if we look at this sentence, a teacher from our school spoke briefly, we know then that it's going to be somehow having or coming off of the subject and the verb. So you know the teacher would go here, and what did the teacher do? The teacher spoke, spoke would go here. So you have two words on the horizontal line separated. Then we get into where they go. We have a, which is an article describing teacher, and this is how we would describe, or this is how we would put these things. So a prepositional phrase, the preposition comes off first on a diagonal line. From. School is the object of the preposition. It is always on a new horizontal line. And then we know our is another, it's a possessive adjective, and it comes off of the word it's describing. So what school? It's our school. So it would come off of here. Very simple. Preposition is on the diagonal line. Object of preposition is on the horizontal line. And our, or any adjective, is on a diagonal. Spoke is the main verb, the action verb. How did the person speak? Briefly. That's an adverb, so it comes off diagonally. Pretty simple. Let's try one. A stray dog ran through the park. As always, and remember, the first thing you do is ask yourself, what is the sentence about? Your answer is dog. What did the dog do? What did it do? Yep, you're right, it ran. So now we know these are always on the horizontal lines. What kind of dog is it? It's a dog. We put it on the horizontal or the diagonal line. What kind of dog is it? It's a stray dog. So we would put that here. Now obviously it would be a little neater if you did it with a pen or pencil. So describing the dog comes off of here. We have an article, we have an adjective. Where did it run? Through the park. Through is our preposition. So that comes right off of ran, right here. Remember what we said, the object of the preposition is always on a horizontal line. And what park? The park. The adjective goes on the diagonal line of the word it describes. So while it seems intense and somewhat confusing, it's not really. So we label article, adjective, common noun, action verb, preposition, object of the preposition, and a common noun, and article. For the test, I would actually be looking for you to identify object of the preposition and the part of speech, which would be a noun, common noun. So let's move on here. We're going to move on to linking verbs. This will be the last thing that we do today in class. Linking verbs. A linking verb is a verb that expresses a state of being, or it connects subjects to the predicate. So, you know, again, the definitions are kind of vague. When you see them in the sentences, they really start to stand out and make sense as the context of how they're being defined. So a linking verb really just tells us something about the subject of the sentence. It helps to clarify something. When we have a linking verb, the subject is not actually doing anything. The subject is not actually performing an action. The subject is just there. But we know something about the subject from the linking verb. So this is key information here too. A linking verb connects or links the subject to a word or word group that identifies or describes the subject. So these words are key right here. The linking verb connects the subject to other words that identify, rename, or describe the subject. And we'll see this when we get to a couple examples in a minute. These are common linking verbs. I know that many of you will realize that a lot of these are also, or can also be helping verbs if they're paired with a main verb. But again, these are the most common linking verbs. You don't need to recite them, memorize them, but you do need to be aware of what they are. So, some more things. Here we go. This will clarify some things. The children are quiet. This is a sentence. Of course it is. We have a subject. Okay, again, let's always go to our same thing. What is the subject of sentence? What is it about? It's about the children. What are they doing? They're not doing anything in this sentence. They just are. So we know that if they're not physically doing something, they are there. Okay? So this is a linking verb. Are is a linking verb. If I said the children ran, what are they doing? They're running. So that's an action. The children are, that doesn't mean they're not, you can't do it. They're just being there. They exist. Okay? So we have a linking verb, and then we have a predicate adjective at the end describing the children. The word in the predicate always links back or connects and tells us something about the subject. This is describing the subject. Are is a linking verb in the sentence. Again, it connects the subject, children, to the adjective quiet. Just like this sentence, the sky appears cloudy. The skies appear cloudy today. Appear is the linking verb, okay, because the sky is not appearing all of a sudden from behind a screen. It's just there. It looks cloudy. It's not physically doing something. So appear is a linking verb, and it's connecting or joining the adjective cloudy to the skies. Basically, what you can do when you have a linking verb is, in these sentences, you can move quiet to the front of the subject or the noun or pronoun it's modifying. The quiet children, the cloudy skies. That's what you can do when you have a linking verb in these sentences. Let's look at a couple more. Let's decide, are these action or linking? Amy looked through the telescope. Amy looked pale. So take a second. Ask yourself the question, what is this sentence about? It's about Amy. What did she do? She looked through the telescope. So she's performing an action. This is an action verb. Then all of you should be able to tell me what this is. Anyone know? Yes, that's right. It's a prepositional phrase. How about this sentence? Amy looked pale. What's the subject of the sentence? It's Amy. What did she do? She wasn't looking through something. She appeared or is or was pale. Pale is an adjective. You can move it over here and say pale Amy. So looked sometimes is an action verb, sometimes it's a linking verb. We have a couple of those sentences we could just diagram rather easily. The subject is Amy. What did she do? She looked. Where did she look? Through the telescope. Very simple. Through goes on a line because that's where the preposition goes. Telescope is the object of the preposition. The is the article. Very easy. In this sentence, Amy's our subject again. The verb again, it's still looked, okay, even though it's a linking verb, it goes here. But now we have this new line right here. It's pointing back to the subject. Okay, notice that it's pointing back to the subject because it's linking the word pale to Amy. So when you have a linking verb, you have a diagonal line pointing to the left back to the subject. Pale is describing Amy. That's why this line is pointing us back there. Let's look at a couple more. Turtles are reptiles. This is an easy one. What's the sentence about? Turtles. What did they do? They didn't do anything. They just are. What are they? They're reptiles. We need this line right there. And reptiles goes here. Now, reptiles is not an adjective. It's a common noun. It's also known as a predicate noun because it's describing or renaming, actually, turtles. We have a linking verb, then we have a common noun. Very simple, very easy. We'll do more practice of these Thursday and Friday. And again, this will be posted on Schoology so you can review it to add to your notes. Here's another one we could diagram. The snake is large and shiny. First thing always to do, what's the subject of the sentence? What's it about? You're all going to say snake, well done. What did the snake do? It didn't do anything. It is. What kind of snake? It's the snake. Here we go. Yeah, yeah. What about it? It's large. It's shiny. We have the word and that goes on our line. And you could put it any way you want. Sometimes I'll put it the other way. So notice again, we have subject separated from the verb, the linking verb this time, by the horizontal or the perpendicular line. Then we have the predicate adjectives that point back to snake, divided by this diagonal line, referring us back to the subject. Adjective, adjective. That's how we do this. Pretty easy, pretty easy. Not too challenging at all. Let's do another one. This is pretty easy. John and Lance are close friends. What's the subject about? It's about John. It's about Lance. We know where our conjunction and goes. It goes here on the dotted line. Sometimes you put it in there. We'll put it there for now. What are they doing? They're not doing anything. They are. What are they? They're friends. What kind of friends? Close friends. So you should be able to label the part of speech of each one of these words. We have proper noun, right? Proper noun, conjunction, linking verb, predicate noun, or common noun, adjective describing a noun, of course. We know that this line is pointing us back to John and Lance because we have a linking verb and this is referring us back there. Not too challenging once you get the hang of it. So more practice will make it clearer. Try this sentence and we'll go over this first thing on Thursday. Mike and Willie ate cold pizza and fresh fish. See if you can diagram it. This might not be how you think it'll be, so be careful. Diagram it in your notes and label the part of speech of each word, and that'll do it for today's class.